It is Monday, March 7th, 2022. I am sitting here quietly. I watched X-Men Apocalypse yesterday. It's still fresh in the back of my mind. The DVR didn't work though, so I have snippets of it. And then I'm listening to the morning update. There's a person by the name of Lisa Vasyilenko. She is asking for Ukraine to have a no-fly zone over their place, their country. Or I don't know, are they a country or are they a state? Gets a little confusing. But there's her speaking about this word democracy. She also questions it as well when it's put to the test, which is at the moment I feel what they're going through. My rebuttal to her, or my add-on, would be that currently I'm in the U.S. This us. I have the headdress that matches the Ukrainian whatever, but I've never been to Ukraine, never spoke, I don't know their language. I don't know anybody here that's from Ukraine. But I'm watching my side of the water with the rock, paper, for scissors. And at home, from the school that bears no unity flag whatsoever in the local area, even though I've questioned it for my side of the water, it says unrest in the American colonies. When I go to this en français, an Indian war, it mentions in a little place, it says, it was no surprise when the war that began in North America spread to the two other continents and the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. So Oceania state is involved, which covers the water. In Europe and Asia, land forces, the war was called 7 Years' War. So for tedesco, in Germano, it's Sieben. Sieben, in Anglais or English, it's 7-year war. In North America, where I am in North America, it got its own name called the French and Indian War, en français. This has an international license. I don't know who wrote this piece of wisdom, but it is internationally licensed, not just where my feet are. So my question now is, when I try to piece apart and look at from inside the us, being rock and papers match the genetic appearance in this local area of North America, my question to the Somebody Special department and the Big Brother department is, how and why are there UN members functioning inside the US or inside the UK? The UN members are to stay in UN in a nice little square box. So then the larger project of planetary and wizards and warlocks don't get overwhelmed, and then we lose, say, cosmologically a moon, or the light feature goes up to high voltage. Currently it appears, because inside the US, there are members of UE, or EU, for the Europeans that I'm aware of, Eastern, Central, Western. What I am confused about is why anyone at the UN level allowed employment at US level or UK level. UN, if that's the one with the world and multi-continent and multi-nation, should stay at UN level, so they don't get in the habit or the business of or redirecting of what needs to stay as stable features within the UK and the US and within the EU or UE. But for some reason this seems, and I don't know, I mean, it's so multifaceted and it's gone on for so long. They're saying that they can't ask for a no-fly zone because that'll pull Russia into World War III. I don't even know what that means to humans. I mean, I speak alien. I'm on my own planet. I mean, there's some labels that the humans keep saying that, but again, as you can see, I'm trying to piece together American history in the making with what they've already done or what they're advising on. And then I have this fanciful, real world, in action, in figurine, in the moment pieces. So I'm going to use this CBS This Morning because it's this woman, that's her name, who's dealing with this, where this is her real memoir of where she is at the same moment that I am here in New York with no moon.
We need the world to stand with us, not just like Twitter hashtags, but like really come here and stand with us. We are a partner, a global partner of NATO, of the US, of Canada, of all the other countries.
Now, she has here Parliament. I don't know what that means. In the US, they don't use Parliament. They have something different, which I also am trying to figure out since the UN has infiltrated the US part, and I don't know about the UK because I don't know where they run out of, where they run their operation out of.
Countries. And as a partner, we responsibly assess our capabilities, and we do not have the capability to shoot down every single Russian missile, rocket, or bomb that is flying onto the territory of Ukraine. We have hazardous objects, critical infrastructure, which includes nuclear power stations. If we are one of these days unable to cover the sky over these nuclear reactors, the world is looking at a catastrophe never seen before. President Zelensky has been...
Now, in my area, just so my relative elsewhere is aware of, this is functioning in North America and calling itself a king. It's a problem. I've been reporting on the problem. Nobody seems to be taking it off of broadcasting or off the calendar.
Begging for a no.
But it's been given a voice inside North America and inside of UN. And there's some that function with a UK accent. So now it gets really debilitating when someone is in need of something and asks, and this says, it's not one of ours. I really want to get involved. And that is what I hear coming out of her report this morning She specifically says it. She says it's other people saying it, but it's like, no, those are your people.
Zone. If we honor that request, that puts us, the U.S. and the Western allies, into World War III, and no one seems to be willing to take that on. What's your response?
Now, this is also her trying to control the narrative. Why would she and I want this to ever control our fate or our narrative? Being that I'm in North America, where there's a specific rock, a specific wall, a specific paper, specific management expectation. Why would I ever allow this to speak on my behalf? I wouldn't. But yet it's happening.
To that?
By not covering the Ukrainian skies, you are at bigger risk than of entering World War III ever. Russia has no resources to attack the US or any NATO base for that matter. NATO is many times bigger than even the Russian army, although it's the biggest.
Now, I cannot confirm that, but she has parliament knowledge. She's closer to Russia than I am. So this is me trying to figure out from her education standpoint and my education standpoint and my international license update that they gave me, along with some of the other state televised with FCC regulate of approval for however that happens, to come through on broadcast and telecast. This is not to challenge at the moment the pieces that I need. This is to whatever in figuring out how, because there seems to be quite a few puzzle pieces that are in a malfunction state at the moment, which is not a broadcasted or televised piece, but it is a major concern as far as I'm concerned.
The second biggest in the world, but Russia is not going to spare their resources and spread themselves thin because they are focused on eradicating Ukraine from the face of the earth. But what will happen and what
now? Does she believe that the Russians, because I'm wearing 22s at the moment, but I have a capability of 55s, which then makes my last name a little hazy at stargazing. Language Lab seems to be more understanding when it gets all tied together with one from each, whatever. But that's in a space between here and there. But now I just want her to know that this larger functioning unit or puzzle piece called Russia, our big brother, because I have a very tiny piece of a puzzle in New York at the moment, more than land management seems to be able to handle. Ukraine, though, has a larger piece on the whatever than even I am functioning within. But that really is irrelevant. It's more neat and tidy standards. So I just want to remind little brother that big brother likes things neat and tidy, and they tend to be more helpful when that's a remembered fact.
What is a much bigger risk is that one of these days, one of our nuclear stations is going to get hit. And then you are all in trouble. Your health and your livelihood is in trouble because this is going to be a nuclear catastrophe of the magnitude the world has never seen before.
People on the West are...
See, my feeling is doesn't want to get involved, doesn't really care if we get wiped off the planet. Will care when it affects their food, their transportation, and whatnot. But that's not where humanitarian and global security is supposed to come from.
People in this country
this
say,
is democracy.
This is between Russia and Ukraine. This has nothing to do with us. Your response to that, I think you pretty much answered that.
This is everything to do with you. This is not between Russia and Ukraine. This is about, the very concept of human rights, sovereign states. Are these concepts just on paper for you, or do you really believe in them? If you
Actually, I was educated in New York, or held in New York with very little education. Not quite sure. I tried to decipher the word and then build myself a construct, which I've been documenting to get it as close to a possibility as I can to fit into a larger conversation. But it was never put on paper or explained in North America because we have the problem with the dark false king trying to take over in North America at the same time that everyone's quiet in the other section of Northern Hemisphere.
you really believe in them, then stand up and fight for them. But like really fight for them. It's also about democracy. Look, people around the world have been gathering in meetings and protests to stop this war in Ukraine and to urge governments to act now. And the governments are telling you people that, look, we know better than you. What does that say about democracy? Does democracy even exist if the people are speaking and the government is not listening and saying that they know best? I'm sorry, but in this case, they don't know best.
Lesia, thank you so much. I know it sounds very cliche, but please stay safe. I know you've got 3 children, including a 9-month-old baby.
Here's a prediction.
Casualties. But anyway, it ends. The Ukrainians will not let Russia occupy it. The Ukrainians will fight. They're fighting now and they will continue to fight. And I am convinced that the Ukrainians will ultimately win.
Now, she is a U.S. top diplomat to Ukraine on the fighting of the alleged war crimes. No idea what that means, but she's a U.S. top diplomat, so we put her in the correct category on why is there so much UN in my U.S., my EU, and UK. Just curious. Part of the history in North America of how the system broke, we'll categorize by a tennis player story named, not Carole King, I don't know, she's some other king, but she's not the dark, evil king that is on the calendar now trying to control the conversation.
Natural looking color, Jergens. VRRAP.
I love tennis very much. I wanted it to change ever since I started in the sport. I thought it was just for the rich, just for the white.
This defiance was such a track signal of like, uh-oh, the kids are in trouble. I have no idea why from this point they couldn't have installed a infrastructure that could hold the wiring the way that other stable features need the wiring to be held up, to hold up the economy and the rock and the paper. Why would tennis stars want the entire governance system to collapse? Just so they didn't have to wear a skirt? Rich tennis players let her play.
Ever since that day when I was 11 years old and I wasn't allowed in a photo because I wasn't wearing a tennis skirt, I knew then that I wanted to change the sport.
Not a little respect, a lot of respect.
Yeah.
Now that the sport's changed, we need to readdress some of the issues and maybe scale back a little.
Billie Jean King famously
Watch
beat
this.
Bobby Riggs in the 1973 Battle of the Sexes tennis match. She has spent her entire life fighting for equal pay for all women. March is Women's History Month, where we honor extraordinary...
Now look what women they want to honor in North America. I don't even have a voice in here in this fight.
women like King. And our...
I mean, I don't know who any of these people are, and I don't know if they make the argument correct, based on the fact that state of Oceania is having an issue, according to the update in the international licensed papers that came home from the local school, which should hold or bear some weight. I just don't know, whatever.
In
But
our
it's a
special series,
problem.
Changing the Game. We profile
Changing the game. And here's who's
those
talking.
who are making an impact now and on future generations. Amazon's editorial director, Sarah Gilman, is here to join us and tell us what books we can read to learn more about these incredible women. So, Sarah, when we talk...
He's controlling the conversation, as is she, and that's their guest. I won't even listen to it. I started listening to it, and I'm just like, oh my God, it is like, what? Yeah, not my cup of tea. Anyway, that's what I call a soccer mom. It's not a compliment. So let's think about this. Oh, and then I've got to cut to X-Men for the apocalypse, because there's a part in there that goes to this. Hang on. Right here. It says X-Men Apocalypse.
You really have...
Now, this says Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America, and this is their symbol, supposedly. I've never been invited, so I'm not sure. But this is really important because the man in the wheelchair, which is Charles Xavier, and the other character go to visit some employee there. Did you know that Xavier, the last four letters are the number 4, which is F-O-U-R, which is hour. Hour. Anyhow, so they're going to visit this woman who has been researching something. But he says that they've met several times before, but he keeps wiping her memory. So every time he goes, it's like it's a brand new meeting, and she doesn't know who he is. But he hasn't seen her in a while.
We haven't seen her in all
Sounds
these
like
years.
real life
You never looked her up?
for me.
Not even in Cerebro?
Thanks. What do you take me for? Some kind of pervert?
Ah, and this handsome fellow over here is named Alex.
Yes, I looked her up once. Twice. But not in a long time, all right?
How'd you leave things? Any hard feelings?
Not likely. Everybody take a break? I wiped her mind off all memories of us. The beach, Cuba, that whole time. It was so long ago, Alex. Before the world knew about mutants, I felt it was the best thing for her.
And for you?
Didn't really matter what was best for me. Moira McTaggart, hello. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Professor
Charles Xavier. I know exactly who you are.
You do.
Of course I do. I've read all of your papers. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Maura McTaggart.
Alex Summers.
Have a seat. Just throw that on the floor.
It's wonderful to see you again, to meet you again for the first time. You've got a son?
Yes.
Does he have a husband? Do you have a husband?
I had a husband, but it's hard to do this job and make it home in time for dinner.
Good.
We all make choices, right?
Yes, you do.
Professor.
Yes? Yes. We were hoping that you would tell us about what happened yesterday in Egypt.
I'm afraid that's classified information. And I don't mean to be rude, but how did you get in here?
I have level 5 clearance.
Ever since the world found out about mutants in '73, there have been cults who see them as some kind of second coming or sign of... I was tracking one of them. They call them...
Now, for myself, in flashback to real world, not story world, that has a parallel paradox of they're never going to give it to you straight, but close enough. I mean, a kind of, sort of, but not really kind of a way. I was on Fish Island, which is Jesus. They say that it's the Jesus fish. A lot of the locals I've seen, well, used to see it earlier in my life, had a fish with the word Jesus in the middle of it. They don't really use that symbol a lot anymore around here. I don't know why. But it's indicative of the island that I'm on that's shaped like the fish. So I'm in the eye of the storm at whatever in Queens on the island, but it's island. And there was a gene court that I happened to in New York State. It was on public record. There was a title company that was there for rock solid anchor. And then there was, but very little interaction. Again, it was my first real estate transaction, and I didn't know, do you keep in touch? I don't know what's appropriate. I don't want to intrude on someone's privacy, which I never did. Brian Buffini, when I did that, whatever, he suggested getting in touch with old clients just to remind them you were in the business, which I did for a short time, but it's whatever. And then there was in clientele, there was another very important transaction. It was returning the Blue Park back to an appropriate Long Islander, residential Long Islander or whatever. I guess once title transferred, it became a Long Islander. So that happened. So the park and the gene, but Jean, again, Kiev, Jean, Jean. It depends on what and to whom you address. And on this side of the water of Codex, I don't know, is it Americus, is it Atlanticus? Je ne sais pas, non so, I don't know. But there's, they call it the French and Indian War, en français. Other places, they call it, maybe where they're hungry in the eye, I don't know. They might call it Seven or Zaiben. Again, je ne sais pas, I don't know. But it still exists. I still exist. I've just been biologically damaged by several methods. But I keep trying to figure out how to not be so harmed by what is getting lost in North America for some reason. And looking at the paperwork, it looks like several other areas might be interested to know or whatever. And I can't seem to find family. I don't know why. I know the girl said that people are gathering, there's rallies and things. I have limitations, let's just put it that way. So I stay on foot and I walk. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.